What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and in this video, I've got 33 players that I like for tomorrow's slate. I'm going to share my screen. I'll take you through Outlier. I'll show you all the form. I'll give you my reasons, my explanations. And then by the end of it, watch the whole video. And then once you're done, check the pinned comment. You'll see my final bets if you do decide to ride with me. Now, if that sounds interesting, let's get into it. Let's go. So we're kicking it off with the Dallas Mavericks versus the Charlotte Hornets. Maxi Kleber, Josh Green, game time decisions for Dallas. Charlotte, pretty much the same team you have been seeing as of late. Now, there's a few players that I don't mind in this game, so I'm going to take you through the different players and the picks. I'll explain what I like. If you like it too, feel free to take the bet. If not, we'll carry on. But the first player that I want to look through is my man Daniel Gafford. Now, I'm honestly considering a play, well, two plays for Gafford. And the first one is his assist prop. Now, I did take his assist prop in that last game, and he finished with 0 assists. Did have some foul trouble, had 0 potential assists. He did only play 16 minutes up against the Houston Rockets. But now, why do I like this play? Well, up against the Charlotte Hornets in this one. But the reason I like this play for Daniel Gafford is chances are Maxi Kleber's not going to play. Derek Lively is out. If you've been watching Dallas games, you'll see Kyrie, Luka, they get blitzed up the top. They're trying to force the ball out of their hands. Find someone like Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, or Maxi Kleber in that short roll towards the high post. And those bigs doing a great job finding shooters in the wings and in the corners for open shots. Now, for Daniel Gafford, he's covered this line in 7 of his last 10 games. He's averaging 2.8 assists in those games. I also like that we're seeing plus money here, plus 120 for Daniel Gafford. He's only averaging 2.9 potential assists over those last 10 games. So a lot of the time, he's making that pass. If he does get there, it is easy cash. Now, it is a bit of a risky bet because the opportunity sometimes can be slim to none. Daniel Gafford looks to block a lot of shots, so he can find some foul trouble. I'm telling you, this guy can find it. But at these odds, it might be worth a play. The other alternative I'm thinking there is to take over 2.5. Line's not available at the moment, but if you can find over 2.5, very juicy odds. Could just be a high value single bet because it is quite risky. If you're looking at his numbers, the games where he has cashed over 1.5 assists, he's also cashed over 2.5 assists. So might be better value if you just take the 3 assists. That way you can only bet a little bit, quite a risky play because I feel like he's going to kill this line or he's not going to get close to it. So that's one thought process I have for Daniel Gafford. The other play that I'm considering is his over 7.5 rebounds in this game. Now, he's only covered this in 4 of his last 10 games. He's only averaging 6.8 rebounds per game in that span. What we've seen is 24 minutes a night. But as I mentioned, no Lively, no Kleber. He's only played 1 game without them this season. Let me show you what it looks like. If we remove Maxi Kleber and Derek Lively, he's covered in 7 of his last 10. Nothing to get excited about because he's only played 1 game for the Dallas Mavericks without Maxi Kleber and Derek Lively. In that game, he had 15 rebounds against the Golden State Warriors. Now, the matchup is up against the Charlotte Hornets. They do allow the 3rd most rebounds to centers so far this season. So centers have been feasting on this Hornets. When it comes to boards, Daniel Gafford should get more minutes. I'm thinking, if he's averaging about 25 minutes over his last 10, let me just change this filter. He's averaging about 25 minutes in his last 10 with no Lively. Chance Maxi Kleber doesn't play because he's picked up an injury in that last game against the Houston Rockets. I'd say Daniel Gafford's probably due to get about 28 minutes in this game. And if we filter out his numbers, let's look at his last 10 games where he's played at least 28 minutes. All right. What we can see is he's covered this in 8 of his last 10 games, but it's only 1 game he's played for Dallas with more than 28 minutes, and that was against the Golden State Warriors. All these other games were back when he was playing for Washington. So I think Daniel Gafford's going to see some opportunities. You might even consider his rebounds plus assists. I don't mind the assist prop. It is quite risky. I'm going to jump into Luka right now because the play that I like for Luka is his rebound prop, and this could ultimately force me not to take the Daniel Gafford prop because Luka, you could argue, probably has a better chance or a stronger argument to take his bet. So let me just jump into Luka right now. I've looked at all of Luka's lines. The main one that I'm really interested in here is his rebound prop. Over 10.5 boards. Now, firstly, it's plus money. You know that I like plus money. And what is plus money, you ask? It means if you put $100 on it, on this bet, you'll make at least $100 profit, which is great. Usually more. And that's what I'm looking for. With a lot of your standard lines, you put $100 on it, you might get $80 to $90 back. Plus money means you're going to get over $100 back if you put $100 on it. And I love that. So this is a plus money play. Luka over 10.5 rebounds. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10. He is averaging 10.6 rebounds in those games. Does have a great matchup here. Hornets leak rebounds to point guards. And in head-to-head matchups, Luka's covered in 2 of his last 3 games against the Charlotte Hornets. His last game and only game he played against them this season, he did have 12 rebounds back in November. So historical form's great. His recent form is decent. The matchup is excellent. And Dallas, without Lively, without Maxi Kleber, they'll only have Daniel Gafford. So PJ Washington could have a really strong rebounding game in this one. And I think Luka could as well. Luka obviously has the better form. PJ Washington did have a great rebounding game in the last one, but no Lively. Gafford was in foul trouble. Really left Maxi Kleber as the only big. Someone like PJ Washington had to stand up. So yeah, so I am liking Luka's rebounds, but as I do with all my picks, I'm just sharing with you what I found so far before I go to bed. It's almost 11 p.m. at the moment as I record this, so it's going to be a very late night for me, given the number of plays that are on the card. I'll do more research, check the pin comment. Chances are you see Luka rebounds on there because I do like this play quite a bit. The other play that I am considering is for my man Vasily Micic, and I honestly don't love this play as much as with a lot of the other bets that I would share in this type of video. But this has been just such a reliable bet for me in recent times. I feel like I can't ignore it. So it's his points plus assist prop. So the line's at 18.5. He does have a somewhat difficult matchup here. Dallas have definitely improved their defensive game after the trade deadline, and they've really improved on point guards. 10th fewest points, 11th fewest assists to point guards. Micic, he has covered this in 6 of his last 10. 4 consecutive games now he's covered his points plus assists. He's been passing the ball extremely well, and his points-wise, it's been very consistent as well. So this is a home game. Outlier gives a bit of an insight here. He's exceeded this in 8 of his last 9 games at home. So let me just chuck the home filter on. Check that out. 8 of his last 9 games, Micic covering 18.5 points plus assists, averaging 21.6 points plus assists in his last 10 games. So I feel like the data and the form really stacks up. I know Dallas, somewhat difficult matchup. If I look at the recent form, though, Orlando, that's a somewhat difficult matchup, but he's had a lot of success against them in the past. We've got the Clippers, somewhat decent. Cleveland, that's a difficult matchup. Cleveland is a difficult matchup for assists, but he had 10 assists in that game. And yeah, he's had 2 games against Orlando and he's torched them both times, but that is a very hard matchup. So I feel like, yeah, the Dallas matchup is difficult, but, Micic has had some difficult opposition in his past 10 games and he's got it done. So yeah, that's one lean of mine. The other one is, I did speak about him a bit earlier, is PJ Washington. PJ Washington, what I'm looking at for him now, if you've been following these videos for quite some time, I have been betting his 3-point prop quite aggressively, really. But that line is now, well, it's still 1.5, but the odds for that is terrible, minus 185. The 2.5 is an option, but he did burn me against Houston. He missed his first 5 3-pointers, then he made his last 2 in overtime. What I do like about the 3-point prop for PJ Washington is just the volume. 6.7 attempts in his last 10. Luka, Kyrie attracting so much attention. PJ Washington getting a lot of open looks. Hornets don't defend the 3-point line very well, so the map is not bad here for PJ Washington. But for this particular game, I'm looking at a different angle here, and I'm just looking at his points prop. So the line, 13.5 plus 100. So this line was at 12.5. It is starting to move, but at 13.5, I still think it's worth a good play. Now, we can see he's hit this in 6 of his last 10, averaging 14.8 points per game. In his last 5, averaging 19.4. He's hit this line in 4 consecutive games. One of those games was without Luka in it, but his matchup, it's not too bad. Hornets, middle of the pack when it comes to defending power forwards, but I think a really strong factor in this one, and I don't know how much stock I'm putting into this, but PJ Washington up against his old team, played with the Charlotte Hornets for a number of years, was drafted by them, traded to Dallas this season. I don't know if the whole revenge game up against your old team, I don't know if that's in PJ Washington's blood, but look, it could be an omen that he does have a big game. So I don't mind the over in his points prop. And for a high value single, I'm looking at him to get over 19.5 points as well. That's plus 500 odds, which is pretty juicy. He's hit this in 2 out of his last 5 games. He's going to get the opportunities here. I can see Luke and Kyrie probably dapping up a lot of assists. And yeah, up against his old team. I wouldn't be surprised if I see this happen. So I'll probably put a small amount of cash on this one. Main prop, his points prop. That's the one that I am considering the most in this game. The last player in this game that I'm looking at is my man Kyrie Irving. So been playing it excellent at the moment. My favorite player, maybe even a little bit biased, but there's a couple of players that I like on this one. And the first player I'll take you through, I actually considering taking the under in his points prop. So the line's at 25.5. He's been playing quite well. He's covered this in 4 consecutive games. 7 out of his last 10, averaging 27.6 points per game in his last 10 games. The matchup, the Charlotte Hornets, surprisingly, they defend twos quite well. 6 fewest points to shooting guards on the season. I've noticed that trend all year. So it's not like a very relatively new thing. They've actually been slowing down shooting guards for quite some time. Now, Kyrie up against the Charlotte Hornets, he's gone under in 3 consecutive games, scoring 18 points in 3 games, 3 consecutive games against the Charlotte Hornets. In those games, he's attempting 15 shots. He's shooting a pretty poor percentage. If you look at his last 10 games, he's shooting a great percentage, not gonna lie. 52% from the field, 39% from threes, 91% from the free throw line. Dallas, 12.5 point favorites in this game. Luka's not in any doubt for this game, so he seems healthy. Luka can score. Gafford's got a great matchup. PJ Washington up against his old team. He can get some buckets as well. I just feel like, is Kyrie going to really need to score 25.5 points in this one? He has been doing it as of late, but you could argue that he probably needed to. A lot of clutch buckets. I can't see this game being close when it comes down to the end of the game. It haven't been overly competitive. So Dallas could potentially cover this line. Fourth quarter Kyrie, I don't think that's going to be required here. Plus, he's got a difficult matchup. So my favorite player, not going to lie, but I am considering the under in his points prop. What I am considering for an over, though, is his assist prop. So the line in this game, 4.5. He's hit this line in 5 of his last 10. He's only averaging 4.4 assists per game. In terms of potential assists, he's averaging 9.5 potential assists. The one game where he went crazy, had 22 potential assists against the Golden State Warriors, and he only finished on 7 in that game. Dallas, they don't have the most reliable shooters, but the potential assists are there, so he's willing to move the ball. That last game against Houston, 48 points. He was passing the ball, but he wasn't necessarily creating. So I think there's a chance that Kyrie does a great job passing here. Matchup, the Hornets do allow the 7th most assists to shooting guards on the season. They allow the 3rd most assists overall. And in head-to-head matchups, he's had some success. 2 out of his last 3 games. His last game against the Charlotte Hornets, he did have 10 assists in that game, averaging 6.6 assists in these matchups. He had 18 potential assists in that last game as well against them. I think this might be worth a play. And in terms of a high-value single, I'm looking at taking over 6.5 assists for Kyrie Irving. Plus 320 for the very same reason that I just mentioned. One thing I'm really conscious of, though, is that this is a very big slate of games. 33 players. I might end up with 15 to 20 different single bets. I guess where there's potential for a high value single, I might not take just his regular assist line. I'm not too sure. I might even have a same game parlay where I take his under in points over in assists. So I'm not too sure where I'm going to go with this. Just don't want to go a bit crazy and get overly excited and put too many bets on. So, but yeah, Kyrie, under in points, over in assists. That's one thought process going through my mind. Other than that, there's no other picks within this game that I do like. Now, jumping into the next game, it's the 76ers versus the Toronto Raptors. I mean, the Detroit Pistons, my bad. There's only 2 props available at the moment. And that's for Cade Cunningham and Joel Embiid, and that's because they're game time decisions. On top of that, Maxey, Kyle Lowry, Tobias Harris, Anthony Melton, they're all game time decisions as well. So given we don't know who the hell is going to play in this game, Philly, 16-point favorites as well. So massive blowout potential. A lot of players on the injury list. There's nothing in this game right now that I could tell you to really bet on. There's nothing that I like because there's nothing available. So let's jump into the next one. It's Toronto Raptors versus the Indiana Pacers. Pacers fully healthy for this game. 11.5-point favorites. The Toronto Raptors, they've got, what is it? I always call him Gravy Dick. But anyway, Dick's a game time decision. And a lot of players are out. Most notably, Emmanuel Quickly is out. So for this particular game, there is 3 players that I'm looking at the moment. The very first one I'm looking at is Kelly, and I've taken this bet a few times since the Toronto Raptors have been plagued by injuries, and it's his under and his rebound prop, 7.5 boards. Check this out. Now, the under has cashed in 9 of his last 10 games, Kelly Olynyk. He did go over against Washington. He had 9 rebounds, but everybody knows Washington and Charlotte, some of the worst rebounding teams that you will ever see, especially to that center spot. So I wasn't surprised to see him go over in that game. Now he's up against the Indiana Pacers. They're middle of the pack when it comes to rebounds allowed to centers. They're middle of the pack when it comes to rebounds allowed in general. I don't think Kelly Olynyk covers his rebound line today. So 9 of his last 10, he's gone under. And in head-to-head matchups, he's gone under in 2 straight games against the Pacers. But keeping in mind, only averaging 15 minutes a night in these games. Over his last 10 games, he's playing, almost 30 minutes. So even if we double the production, he's averaging 15 minutes in these 2 games against the Pacers. Double that, he's getting 4 rebounds, really? Even if he's getting 6, it's still a lot lower than where I'd like it to see. Miles Turner stretches the floor, difficult. Jalen Smith, when he comes on, very much the same. Can stretch the floor, takes Kelly Olynyk out. I just don't feel like Kelly Olynyk, the boards, I don't see him getting him in this game. So under 7.5, I'll take. If it moves to 6.5, then I'll probably be a bit hesitant. But 7.5, I'd be quite confident in taking. The next play that I'm looking at is Spicy P. It's Pascal Siakam. So there's a few players that I like for him. And the very first one is, let's talk about his assist prop. So this is a high value single that I'm considering taking, and it's him to get over 4.5 assists. It's plus 290. Now, Pascal Siakam doesn't have the best matchup in the world. Well, the Raptors do allow a lot of assists, but not necessarily to power forwards. But 1s and 3s they do. So you think Tyrese Halliburton could have a big assist game. But looking at the historical data, in the 2 games Pascal Siakam's played against the Toronto Raptors since the trade, he's had excellent passing numbers. But looking at his recent form, he's hit this in 3 of his last 10 games. Not great. He's only averaging 3.3 assists. So you're probably thinking, why the hell would you take him to get 5? Well, last 2 matchups against the Raptors, 7 and 6 assists in those games. Tyrese Halliburton did play in both of those games. And I think both of those games, Halliburton went under his assist line. So really feeding Pascal Siakam in these matchups against the Raptors. 10.5 potential assists. So it's not massive, not crazy. In his last 10 games, he's only averaging 6.2 potential assists, but 3 games where he's had 9 potential assists. In his more recent games, I think the high value single here for Pascal Siakam, half a unit, not a massive risk from my part. I don't mind that. I wouldn't take his regular assist line though, but taking this plus money at a small play, I think it's worth a shot. But the other play where I'm considering putting a full 2 units on is his points plus assists. So that line is at 25.5. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10, averaging 26.6 points plus assists. In terms of the matchup, not a bad matchup for either his points assists, and his head-to-head form crushed it, averaging 31.5 points and assists in his 2 games against the Toronto Raptors this season. Both of those games, he covered his points line and he covered his assist line. So taking the both here, he could cover it in points alone. I don't mind this pick here for Pascal Siakam. Now we're heading over to the Raptors side of the ball. This line has already started to move. It was at 22.5, and it's RJ Barrett. I'm looking at his points prop in this game. It was at 22.5 a couple of hours ago when I was going through it. It's now at 23.5, and I think it continues to move. So now RJ Barrett in his last 10 games, he's covered this in 5 of them, averaging 23.6 points per game. But if you check out the players that they're missing, Scotty Barnes, that's 20 points per game right there. We've got Manuel Quickly, it's 15 to 20 points as well. Jakob Poeltl, that's an easy 10 points that they're missing. They really don't have any offensive options in this game because Gary Trent Jr., he's going to be potentially playing point guard in this game as well. So I don't know if that limits his potential. But if we just look at his games without Emmanuel Quickly, because IQ's missed some time. RJ Barrett, 7 games without Emmanuel Quickly on here. If we look at this season, so he's played 3 games without Emmanuel Quickly in the games, averaging 25 points per game, taking 20 shots. So I'm hoping he takes at least 20 shots in this game. Been playing quite well, to be honest, RJ Barrett. And the matchup, if he's playing at the 4, which is looking like he's slated to start there, great matchup. Pacers allow the second most points to power forwards on the season. So not minding RJ Barrett's over in his points as well. So let's head into the next game. It is the Boston Celtics versus the Milwaukee Bucks. A couple of top teams in the East, but the Celtics, they're 15 games ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks. It's crazy. Boston Celtics, chance that Porzingis doesn't play. He's a game time decision in this one, as well as Al Horford. So the Boston Celtics could be a little bit thin on the inside. Someone like Giannis could potentially take advantage of that. But Giannis, Chris Middleton, they're also game time decisions, as well as Pat Beverly. So I've scoured this. Kristaps Porzingis, his points prop, it does look great. I'll quickly show that to you. But given the questionable tag and whether he's going to play, I'd be quite hesitant to take this bet because the Boston Celtics don't really have any reason to risk him. They could lose every game for the rest of the season, which is 4 more games, and nothing changes in terms of their standing. So his line's at 17.5. He's covered this in 7 of his last 10. I was at 16.5. This line's actually moved a little bit since I last looked. And in head-to-head matchups, he's covered in only 1 of his last 3 against the Bucks, but he does have a great matchup. The Bucks, bottom 5 defensively when it comes to defending centers. But given the injury concern, that's not a play that I really want to play, but the form lines are great. One play I do like, because the numbers are just overwhelmingly positive. I feel like it might be too good to be true. Is Derek White to go over 4.5 assists. So check this out. Derek White averaging 6.8 assists in his last 10 games. He's covered this in 9 of his last 10. In terms of the matchup, it's not a terrible one. It's not a great one either. But Derek White also has great form against the Bucks. Out of his last 6, last matchup against the Bucks, he had 8 assists. The potential assist side of the ball, he's getting 11 potential assists per game. So he needs, if he's going to get 11 potential assists and the line's only at 4.5, so you need 5 assists against this Boston Celtics, whose offense is dynamite. They average the 2nd most points in the league, up against this Milwaukee Bucks team. I think they're bottom 8 defensively. But Derek White should definitely fill up the stat sheet here. So I'm a little bit concerned that this could be a little bit too easy. That's one thing that I'm thinking. But Derek White, I do like that. Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum both have pretty good form leading into this game. But I'd probably have to say for this one, I don't like betting on Jayson Tatum because he's extremely frustrating to bet on because the way that he plays is, I like to say it's stupid. Like, he takes terrible shots. But what I do like is he takes a lot of shots. So the play that I'm looking at here is his over in points and rebounds. So 31.5. When I took notes for this, it was at 30.5. So I don't know if it's starting to move or not, but he has covered this in 6 out of his last 10. He's averaging 34.4 points and rebounds. The matchup, when it comes to the season data, difficult. The Bucks don't allow many points or rebounds to 4s, but Jayson Tatum plays like a 3 anyway. He's definitely more on the wing. And in head-to-head matchups against the Bucks, this has been great. It's cashed in 4 out of his last 5, absolutely smoking them. The one game where he did go under, I think this was the game. This was the game where the Milwaukee Bucks blew the Celtics out by 30+ points, and Giannis wasn't there, and I think Dame wasn't there. Like, all the scrubs were there, and the Bucks blew the Celtics out. So Jayson Tatum only played 15 minutes in that game. So happy to give him a pass on that. But the other 4 games, he's been great against the Bucks. A lot of rebounds, a lot of points. 31.5. I think he can definitely cover that. He's covered it quite well in recent games. And I think it's going to be close. The line's only 2 points in this game, especially if Porzingis is out. Tatum has to rebound a lot better than he normally would. There's also a lot more shots for him to go around. So, yeah, I don't mind the Jayson Tatum play. Yeah, I think it will be frustrating if I was watching. Thankfully, I'll be working, so I won't need to watch it. Another play that I'm considering is a first quarter prop, and that's for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm looking at his first quarter rebound prop. So for him to get over 2.5 boards, let me explain. So he's cashed this in 8 out of his last 10 games. Giannis has actually been playing quite well. The Bucks have been terrible, but Giannis doing everything he can to try to drag them to a win. It's just not working. Rebound-wise, 8 of his last 10, averaging 3.6 rebounds in the first quarter in his last 10 games. The matchup against the Celtics is a difficult one. No, actually, it's not a difficult one. The Celtics, 14th in rebounds allowed, 15th in rebounds allowed to power forwards, which is right in the middle of the league. So not a difficult matchup here for Giannis. And in head-to-head matchups, Giannis has done quite well. He's covered this in 4 of his last 5 games against the Boston Celtics, averaging 3.2 rebounds in the first quarter. He's played the Celtics twice this year. He had 4 rebounds in both of those games. The
Don't mind this one. He's only been playing about 7 minutes in the first quarter, though, so he's going to have to really get active. That's my one concern. But I don't hate this for Giannis in this game. Other than that, I'm not really liking anything else. The Dame lines, that doesn't look great to me. Drew Holiday, not very overly exciting for me. So Tatum, Derek White, probably my strongest leans in this game. The next game is the Miami Heat versus the Atlanta Hawks. Now, Terry Rozier, Jovic, Adebayo, Kevin Love, Orlando Robinson. Game time decisions in this one. Atlanta Hawks, no real changes to their lineup. But in this particular game, there's probably like one. I know I've said this before. I don't like betting on the Miami Heat player props really because anyone can really go off. The strongest lean that I have in this game is for Nikola Jovic. And I actually took his play in his last game, which cash was very much sweat free. I took 7.5 points plus assists. He scored 18 points in that game against the Pacers. So he absolutely killed it. In this particular game, he's got a great matchup here against the Hawks. Don't defend anyone, especially power forwards. Jovic's covered this line in 8 of his last 10, averaging 10.2 points per game. His line's at 7.5. The Heat, 3.5 point favorite. So it's not like there's going to be a definite blowout in this game. Terry Rozier may not play, which could force Tyler Hero or Jimmy Butler into more of a facilitating role, which I think can open up Nikola Jovic to cover these points. My concern here is probably minutes. Playing about 22 minutes a night. Love has recently returned, but that really hasn't impacted his minutes too much. So I don't mind this play. I think my only concern is that Rozier, Hero, Butler, Adebayo, all capable of really going off and scoring a lot of points. Even Patty Mills off the bench could score a lot of points on this Atlanta team that doesn't defend anyone very well. But at the same time, I think this guy's he's the least threatening player in the starting lineup, and I think he'll get some looks and opportunities. So I don't hate this play. I just worry that someone else could really turn it on. But there is a chance Rozier doesn't play, and if Rozier is out, this line's going to move, I believe. So I don't hate this, to be honest. I do like it, and getting on early might be advantageous because I can't see this line going down. But that's the only play I'm really considering in this game. I don't like what I'm seeing in DeJounte Murray's lines, Clint Capella's, Jalen Johnson's. None of those are really interesting me, to be honest. So jumping into the next game, it's the San Antonio Spurs versus the Memphis Grizzlies. This game, obviously, the Memphis have the most. I think I heard that the Memphis Grizzlies have used the most players in the NBA history this season. Just the number of outs that they've had. I think 35 players they've used. But for the Spurs, Keldon Johnson is out. Obviously, Vassell and Sohan, they've been sitting. They're going to be sitting for the rest of the season. So, two players that I don't mind in this game. The first one is for Trey Jones. Now, I did bet on him in his last game, and that cashed really easily. That was a sweat-free pick. I'm looking at his PRA in this game, which is 24.5. Firstly, he has covered in 4 of his last 10. Not overly impressive, averaging 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists. The Spurs, only 3.5 point favorites, so there's a chance this game could be close. He does have a good matchup for rebounds, excellent matchup for assists, and his points, in order for him to score some points, it's not a bad matchup either. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered this in 4 out of his last 7. Most recently, 16.7 boards, 5 assists with 28 PRA the last time he versed the Grizzlies. Now, the filter that I'm going to be using in this one is just taking out Sohan and Devin Vassell. So this season, he's played 4 games without those, averaging 27.5 points, rebounds, and assists. The games he's gone under, Golden State Warriors and the New Orleans Pelicans. He's gone over against Denver and Philly. So none of these are, I guess, a real easy matchup, I would say, for point guards. But Trey Jones getting a lot more opportunities, playing a lot more minutes as well. So 48 minutes in the overtime game against the Philadelphia 76ers, which is crazy, which obviously is well trusted by Popovich, I guess, to run this offense. So I don't mind that for Trey Jones. Branham, Champagny, Makalashvili, I don't trust any of those to really put up some numbers. So Trey Jones and Wembanyama are probably the main ones I'm considering here. So I don't mind the PRA there for Trey Jones. Actually, speaking of Trey Jones, the other player that I'm looking at here, it's a high-value single, and that's just for him to make 2 3-pointers. So his regular line's at 0.5. Now, he's averaging 1.5 3-pointers made in his last 10 games. More recently, he's averaging 1.8 in his last 5. So he's covered in 4 out of his last 5 games. The odds for this, plus 250 for him to make 2 3-pointers. He's attempting 4.2 3-pointers per game, and he's shooting at 43%. So The matchup is a good one. The Grizzlies allow the 8th most three-pointers made as a team. And to point guards, they allow the 4th most three-pointers made, which is pretty crazy. Trey Jones' recent form is good. So a lot of the numbers are aligning here. He's probably going to take 3 to 4 to 5 three-pointers made. So we're going to need a strong three-pointing shooting percentage here for Trey Jones. But given his percentages, I think there's a really good chance. And for these particular odds, I do like it for Trey Jones. So might have a small play on that. The other person I'm obviously going to be looking at is Victor Wembanyama. And speaking of Wembanyama, how awesome does the new logo look that they've got for him that Nike's made? It's a pretty interesting one, the alien head with the Nike swooshes. I think it's a really creative design. Anyway, for Victor Wembanyama, what am I looking at? I'm looking at is considering a couple plays for Victor. I did bet on his assists more recently. I think 2 games in a row now. I've taken his assist prop because he's been passing the ball extremely well. But now for 4.5, you get minus 151. Not overly excited. What I am looking at is his PRA. So that line's at 44.5. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10, averaging 44.2 over these last 10 games. In terms of the matchup, great matchup for points, great matchup for rebounds, somewhat difficult for assists. Not overly concerned by that because he did cover his assist line the last time they played Memphis. Now, the last time they played Memphis, he scored 31 points, 16 rebounds, and 5 assists. Absolute monster. And the other thing I do like about this is if we remove Sohan and Vassell, 4 games Victor's played without them. He's covered in 3 of his last 4 games without them, 46.7 points and rebounds. The only game he went under was up against the New Orleans Pelicans, 17 points, 12 boards, and 9 assists. Now, this game, he's got a great matchup for points, great matchup for rebounds. Assists is his most difficult matchup, but he's covered his assist line in all 4 games without Vassell and Sohan. So I'm not overly concerned by the matchup. I think Victor can have a great all-round game. The other play that I'm looking at is just his rebound line at 11.5. A little bit hesitant, odds at minus 130, so I'll do some line shopping. But you can see he is averaging 12.9 rebounds in his last 10 games, and he's covered this line in 2 of his last 3 against Memphis, averaging 12 boards. So, yeah, I do like his rebound prop as well. I'm looking at a high-value single here for Victor Wembanyama. I consider taking his plus 14.5 rebounds, so he's going to get 15 boards. It's plus 215. Could make a small play on that. So that's cash in 5 of his last 10, and it did hit the last time but they versed the Memphis Grizzlies. So might have a small play on that, or I might even do a same game parlay just for Wembanyama. Might be thinking 25 points, 15 rebounds, or 13 rebounds and 5 assists, or something like that. See what type of odds I can get. But yeah, they're the only 2 that I'm liking in this game. The next one is the Orlando Magic versus the Houston Rockets. Now, there's nothing that I like in terms of a bet for this one. The plays that I have been betting as of late, Jalen Green assists. His line's at 3.5, but he's got an awful matchup in this game. The Magic, great defensively. It's the only reason why they're doing so well. Defensively, they're absolute beast. 46 and 32 on the year. Only 2.5-point favorites in this game, though. Fred VanVleet has been quite aggressive as of late. That is the weak spot scoring-wise against the Magic, but he has struggled against Orlando in the past. So Fred and Jalen Green, not loving their matchups. Jabari Smith, pisses me off when I bet on that guy, so that's not happening. Banchero, never bet on him anyway. Franz Wagner, he's a game-time decision in this one. I was going to take Franz's under in his rebounds and assists because that's cash in 10 straight. But Jonathan Isaac's a game-time decision as well. Without Isaac, Franz actually gets a lot of rebounds and assists. So, yeah, nothing in that game really interesting me. The next one is the New York Knicks versus the Chicago Bulls. So, in this game, there's a couple of players that we need to be cautious of. There's a few game-time decisions, I believe. So, what have we got? Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Alex Caruso, game-time decisions. And for the Knicks, I'd say Bogdanovic, probably the game-time decision that has the ability to move some lines here. But Tibbs doesn't like playing him that much, so I'm not too concerned by that. The first player that I don't mind is, I think I did bet this as well recently. It's DeMar DeRozan's over in his PRA, 34.5. Now check out these numbers. So DeMar DeRozan, as consistent as he is, has covered this in 9 of his last 10 games. 8 consecutive games he's covered this PRA, averaging 36.1. So very close, very sweaty. Within that was a game against New York, and I did take his PRA, and in that he finished on 35. So got over by a hook. He's actually finished on 35 3 times in his last 10 games. It's a pretty sweaty bet, but the hit rate is good. in head-to-head matchups. He's covered this in 4 out of his last 5 games against the New York Knicks. So, but his last 2 games finish on 35 PRA exactly. So the hit rates are great, but I don't see DeRozan absolutely smashing this line and having a sweat-free bet. I think it's going to be real sweaty. He's going to get very close to this line looking at the past. But, if Caruso, DeSonmu, one of those guys are missing, probably more opportunity for DeMar DeRozan. So I don't love this bet, but, it's pretty undeniable, right? So that's one play. The other one I'm looking at, OG Anunoby. So I'm looking at under 17.5 points plus assists for him. So it's minus 128. Now, he's played 2 games since he's come back from injury. Had about 3 weeks off. Just came back, had 12 points against the Bulls, no assists. Then against the Bucks, had 4 points and 2 assists. So definitely trending in the wrong direction. The matchup is a good one for his points, but OG just have the volume. If we go down and look at his games, last 10 games, playing 34 minutes a night, but he's only averaging 10.8 attempts per game. He's 2 games since he's come back, 8 attempts and 10 attempts. If we also look at the history, he's played 2 games against the Chicago Bulls since he's joined the New York Knicks. 1 game, 11 points and 2 assists. The following game after that had 12 points, no assists. So the recent history is great. Form against Chicago Bulls is great. And he just doesn't have the volume to cover this. He's got to shoot a really good percentage. So, yeah, hasn't done it of late. So I'm really considering the under in that one. I'll just do some line shopping, see if I find anything I'm happy with. And then the other play is for Jaylen Brunson. So Jaylen Brunson, I'm looking at his assist prop. I don't mind it. Over 7.5 assists. Now, plus money, plus 114. So, I like that. The matchup's not a bad one either. The Bulls, as a team, they allow the 8th most assists in the league. Jaylen Brunson, his last 4 games, excellent. 10, 11, 11, and 8 assists. Covering this line in 4 straight. He's covered in 6 of his last 10, averaging 8.3 assists in that span. In head-to-head matches, he's covered in 3 of his last 5. But his last 3 games against the Bulls, 9, 13, and 11. So the 13 and 11 assist games against the Bulls, both of those were this season. So I do like that. Then obviously the high-value single play here is for him to go over 9.5 assists. Or you can look at a double-double. Maybe that's gives you better odds. But Jaylen Brunson, plus 340, I don't mind it. In his last 10 games, he's covered this 3 times. So 3 of his last 10, but he's covered in his last 2 games against the Chicago Bulls. So don't mind that for Jaylen Brunson. Other than that, let's jump into the next game. It is Sacramento Kings versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, SGA returning in this game, Keegan Murray and Jalen Williams, both game time decisions. Jalen Williams has potential to move some lines, but SGA being back fucks up everything. Like Josh Giddey has been an absolute beast of late, but now SGA is back. Should impact Josh Giddey's ability. Chet Holmgren doesn't have the best line numbers against the Sacramento Kings, against Sabonis, tough matchup. Sabonis, his lines are super high. None of his form lines look great. De'Aaron Fox has been playing terrible, but his form against the opponent is somewhat average. So it's hard to get a read on anyone in this game. So I'm not choosing to play anything. The only player with great historical trends in this game is SGA. Now, he's had some monster games in terms of points, like 35 to 40 points is what he's done against the Sacramento Kings. His recent form is awful because he was trying to play through an injury. Now, this is his first game back. So I don't know. I'm not willing to take the bet on that. So there's nothing in this game that I'm betting on, but letting you know, SGA does have great historical form against the Sacramento Kings. So check out Outlier, download it, free 7-day trial. Use the link in the video description and then take a look at SGAs if you're interested in that. The next game is the Washington Wizards versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. I've got 3 players that I don't mind in this one. Firstly, Kyle Kuzma is a game time decision, as well as a whole lot of other retards from the Washington Wizards. Minnesota, Karl Anthony Towns still out, but other than that, everyone is good to go. So the first player that I don't mind here is Mike Conley. So I did talk about taking his under in his first quarter assists because that's got an incredible hit rate, 9 of his last 10, but had 3 assists the last time he played the Washington Wizards. So that's what I'm talking about here. I'm not looking at it, but I'm considering taking him for over 5.5 assists. Great matchup. Wizards allow the 2nd most assists in the league. To point guards, they allow the 3rd most assists. He's covered this in 7 of his last 10. And in head-to-head matchups, had 6 assists last time against Washington. My concern with this play is that Conley's not going to blow this line out of the water. I think he's going to finish on about 5, 6, 7, perhaps, based on his trends. I know the matchup is good, but even though the matchup's good, he's only had 6 assists the last time they played the Wizards. So, yeah, the matchup is great, the form is great, the historical form is great, but yeah, I don't know. Something tells me my gut like he might get it, but it doesn't give me too much confidence. So I probably won't play that, but I wanted to show that to you. One play that I think has great potential is Jordan Poole assists. So I don't know if you guys have been keeping tabs on the Washington Wizards, but Jordan Poole's been balling. He's been racking up the assists as of late. Line's at 6.5. Does have a tough matchup though. Timberwolves do allow the 11th fewest assists to point guards, but the second fewest assists overall. Jordan Poole averaging 8 assists in his last 10 games. Last time he versed him, he only had 3 assists, but his role has changed dramatically. He's now the starting point guard for the Washington Wizards. But the other play I'm considering for Jordan Poole is his points plus assists because he's been balling. Check this out. 5 consecutive games now. He's covered this line of 26.5. In those 5 games, 32.6 points plus assists. Although I've got to call out here, hasn't had a real difficult matchup. Raptors allow a shit ton of assists to point guards. He had 29 points, 12 assists. Portland, they ain't doing nothing. The Lakers, their backcourt's not great defensively. The Bucks can't defend anyone at the moment. Miami Heat, pretty good defensive team, but in terms of point guards, they're not doing a great job slowing them down. So Jordan Poole has had the benefit of 5 somewhat easy matchups. Minnesota Timberwolves, they allow the fewest points and the second fewest assists in the league. So, yeah, I'm a little bit cautious, a little bit hesitant, but Jordan Poole, his usage rate is going to be there. He's going to get these opportunities. His form is excellent. He just comes up against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'll do some more research into this. I'm going to be checking out specifically how have the point guards played against the Minnesota Timberwolves over the last 5 to 10 games. Have they been a little bit leaky in that time? I'm not too sure, so I'll check that out. The other player I'm looking at is Kyle Kuzma. So for Kyle Kuzma, I'm looking at his rebounds plus assists, 10.5. Now, he's covered this in 8 of his last 10, averaging 12.4 rebounds plus assists. Matchup is difficult. The Wolves are the second fewest rebounds and the fewest assists to power forwards on the season. What's comforting, though, is in head-to-head matchups, Kyle Kuzma has made it rain. So his last matchup against the Minnesota Timberwolves, 14 rebounds and 8 assists. Absolutely smoked them, covering in 2 out of his last 3. So he's got some good form against the Minnesota Timberwolves. His form over his last 10 games is great. He's on the injury report. He might play because of a right ankle sprain, but the usage rate is going to be there. Kyle Kuzma, Jordan Poole, pretty much doing everything offensively for this team. So I don't mind that for Kyle Kuzma. But that's pretty much it for that game. The next one is the Denver Nuggets versus the Utah Jazz. So there's a lot of players on the injury list in this one, especially for Denver. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, all game time decisions. For Utah, the usual suspect, Clarkson, Collins, Chris Dunn, Kessler, Markkanen, they're all out, so the tank is truly on. I'm not betting on anything in this particular game except for probably Michael Porter Jr. in the first quarter. I'll show you what I'm looking at, actually. Michael Porter Jr., so you guys probably know it by now. I pretty much bet the over in his first quarter points prop every single time. So line's still at 4.5. It's plus money, which is hit in 8 of his last 10 games, 80%. 17 of his last 20 games, which is 85%. And on the season, it's hit at 64%, 49 of 77 games. So if I just take this bet every single time, especially when I get odds like this, it's all going to work out for me. In head-to-head matchups, he's only covered in 2 of his last 6 against the Jazz. They played the Jazz 3 times this season. He's only covered it once. In that last game against them, he did score 5 points in the first quarter. But the matchup is good. I think he'll get his opportunities. We just need him to score, really. So that's a pretty straightforward one, and it's a bet that I'll probably take every single time, unless I find a reason not to. The other play, though, another first quarter points prop, is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. So I don't mind his first quarter points prop in this one. Hit rate is excellent as a late, and it's great against the Jazz. Check this out. His line's at 2.5, right? Now, KCP covered this in 8 of his last 10 games, averaging 4.3 points in the first quarter. Does have a good matchup here against Utah. Speaking about the matchup against Utah, check this out. He's played in his last 6 games against Utah Jazz. He's covered this first quarter prop 5 times in a row, and it was his last 5 games versus Utah Jazz 3 times this season. 3, 4, and 6 points in the first quarter in those matchups. In those games, playing about 9 minutes in the first quarter. In his last 10 games, averaging 10 minutes in the first quarter. So, yeah, the opportunities will be there. Contavious Caldwell-Pope, very capable 3-point shooter. Might just need to make one shot, right? So the hit rate, pretty good. Don't mind that for KCP. I don't know. Do I parlay them together, MPJ and KCP, to go over? Denver could put a 40-point first quarter on. Who knows? But the hit rate is really good for that. The next game is the Clippers versus the Phoenix Suns. Yousef Nurkic is a game-time decision in this game. Kawhi Leonard is still out. Another player that I've taken a few times this season is Terrence Mann to cover his first quarter points prop. Similar to KCP, lines at 2.5. Great odds, -104. Now, this is cashed in 9 of his last 10 games. And the matchup against the Suns, not a difficult one. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered in 5 out of his last 11. He's played the Phoenix Suns twice this year. Scored 12 points in the first quarter in one game. Following game, only scored 2 points against them. Look, his recent form as of late is great. 9 out of his last 10. I'm going to check his activity to see how many shots he's taking. If he's taking 3 shots per quarter, I'm taking this bet because a lot of the times he's open for 3-pointers, especially in the first quarter when the defense is a little bit laxed. So Terrence Mann in the first quarter, I don't mind that. Another play is for James Harden. So for James Harden, I'm looking at taking his points plus assists in this game. 26.5 is what we're looking at here. Let me change this to the over. Now, he's cashed the over in only 4 of his last 10, but he has cashed it in 3 consecutive games, 28, 28, and 27. The matchup against Phoenix is pretty good. Phoenix, bottom 8. They do allow a lot of assist to point guards. In terms of points, they're not great to stopping that either. In head-to-head matchups, James Harden has played the Phoenix Suns twice this year since joining the Clippers, 33 and 29. So averaging 31 points plus assists in those 2 games against the Phoenix Suns. We've got no Kawhi Leonard in this game. We have a look at how James Harden has gone without Kawhi Leonard this year. 7 out of his last 10 games, he's covered this line, averaging 27.2 points plus assists. The games have gone under Sacramento, Milwaukee, and Boston. Cleveland, most recently a difficult matchup. Utah's an easy and a good matchup for them, and it was a blowout, so he crushed it. Denver, difficult matchup, played quite well. So up against the Phoenix Suns, the line's only 7. Phoenix are the favorites in this game. Clippers haven't been great. Paul George had a massive game in that last outing against Cleveland, comeback victory. But Paul George does have a very difficult matchup for Phoenix. I feel like if the Clippers are going to be any chance in this game, James Harden needs to be very productive in it. So he's got to score and create the offense, facilitate, and all that type of shit. So, yeah, James Harden, hoping he has a good game because I'm pretty confident I'm going to take that bet. But the other one I'm thinking about is for Yousef Nurkic, and I'm looking at an under in his points plus rebounds. Under 21.5 points plus rebounds for Yousef Nurkic. Now, he's cashed this in 7 out of his last 10. His last 10 games, averaging 18.6 points plus rebounds. Matchup, difficult one against Zubac here. The Clippers, 3rd fewest points allowed to centers and the 8th fewest rebounds allowed to centers this season. In head-to-head matchups, he's only averaging 13 points plus rebounds against the Clippers in the 2 games they played this season, 15 and 11. In those games, played 23 minutes. In his last 10 games, he's playing 27 minutes. So a slight uplift in his minutes, but that's really elevated by a couple of games. He's also got a questionable tag. So Yousef Nurkic also suffering from a right ankle sprain. So given there's a chance that he's not going to be 100% in this game, recent form all makes sense. The opponent makes sense. The matchup makes sense to me. So I'm pretty confident I'll take the Yousef Nurkic under in points and rebounds, but I'll investigate that a little bit further on. And then the next game, we're looking at the Portland Trailblazers versus the New Orleans Pelicans. In this game, no major changes to the lineup. The first play that I'm looking at here is for Chris Murray. Now, I think I've bet on Chris Murray. I have bet on Chris Murray once this season, and did cash quite easily. And I think it was a similar type of bet over in his rebounds and assists. I'm looking at 5. It's 5.5. In terms of the matchup, it is somewhat difficult for rebounds. Good matchup for assists, but his recent form is great, and he's done this against his opposition. So he's covered this in 8 of his last 10 games. I think the only risk to this bet is if Jeremy Grant plays, but he's extremely unlikely to play. He actually hasn't played a game in April for years. Like every year he gets shut down in April. It's crazy. But Chris Murray, averaging 7 rebounds and assists in his last 10 games, which is great. In terms of the head-to-head matchup, he's played the Pelicans twice this year, and he's covered this line in both games, averaging 7.5 rebounds plus assists. The Pelicans are 12.5-point favorites, but this is a home game for Portland, so hopefully they do play a little bit better. Look at his last 10 games at home, averaging 7.6 rebounds and assists. So, yeah, I'm not loving this bet to bits, but, if I had to take this bet 100 times, I think I'd win it about 60 times. So I think it's a good bet. Chris Murray over his rebounds plus assists. The other one is a play that I've pretty much taken every single time ever since Brandon Ingram's been out. Very straightforward one. It's Trey Murphy to go over 5.5 boards. So he's cashed this in 8 of his last 10 games, averaging 7 rebounds a game. Has a great matchup here. The Trailblazers allow the 6th most rebounds to shooting guards on the season. So I think Trey Murphy has a great chance here. He's covered in only 2 of his last 6 against Portland, but he's playing starter minutes now, so he'll get more opportunities. Since he's joined the starting lineup, you can see it here, playing close to about 35, 36 minutes a night, more opportunities than he's ever had against the Portland Trailblazers. 6 rebounds, yeah, I'll be taking that one for sure. Another player that I do like in this game is another player I've been betting on since Brandon Ingram went out, is CJ McCollum. I like his points plus assists in this game, so check this out. Looking at his last 10 games, he's hit this 7 times, 28.5, averaging 31.2 points plus assists. Up against his old team, the Portland Trailblazers, he's got a good matchup for points and assists. Points-wise, Blazers allow the 8th most points, assists, 10th most assists to point guards on the season. 7 of his last 10, 4 out of his last 5. He's been great in head-to-head matchups, covered in 3 of his last 6. His last game against Portland Trailblazers had 30 points and 8 assists. So he covered his points and his assist line. I do like taking the points plus assists because you can really overachieve in one. If you had to take a high-value single, I'd probably take his points line over 30 points. So he scored 30-plus points in 3 consecutive games now. Let me show you his points line is at 23.5, his regular line. I do like the points and assists a lot better. As terms, if I'm going to get risky with it, for him to score 30 points, he's plus 320. He's covered that in 3 straight, and he covered that in his last game against Portland. So, given the lineups that are the Brandon Ingram is out, I think CJ McCollum has a very strong game. So, I'll take this note of this. It's a high value single for CJ. Another player that I'm considering, it did let me down last time, so I'm a little bit hesitant to be honest, but it's DeAndre Ayton to cover his first quarter points prop. Been watching these videos, been taking it quite a lot. So it is plus money. He's hit this in 7 of his last 10, which is great, averaging 7.2 points per game in the first quarter. His matchup's not too bad here against the Pelicans, and he's versed them twice this season. The last time he played the Pels, he scored 10 points in the first quarter. Portland still lost by 20. So DeAndre Ayton does get busy nice and early in the game. I'll probably take it. This is plus money at 6.5. I would probably take it at 7.5 plus 160 because he doesn't finish on 7 points. It's either he's going 8 or 4 by the looks of it. So I don't hate this play for DeAndre Ayton. Extra value at the 7.5. Don't love it to death either, but again, similar to MPJ, given the recent form and everything, if I just keep taking it, it's going to cash out. That's what I'm really liking in this game. I'm not really feeling Zion or anybody else. Scoot Henderson let me down in that last game, so I'm not loving that. The last game is the Golden State Warriors versus the Los Angeles Clippers. The Los Angeles Lakers. Sorry, it's getting late. Almost 12 o'clock here. Steph Curry. That's the first play that I'm looking at here. 2 different props that I like for Steph. First one is his first quarter assist. So this has been cashing extremely well. 9 of his last 10 games, he's hit the over here. There's plus 100 as well. Lakers do allow a lot of assists, so I do like this for Steph. In head-to-head matchups, his last 11 games against the Lakers, he's cashed his first quarter prop in 8 games. So just the hit rate is great. The matchup is great. And it's a very important game. I think, one, Steph Curry needs to play great if the Warriors are a chance. And I think the Lakers are going to do everything they can to force the ball out of his hand. So it just makes sense that he gets this first quarter prop. The other play that I'm liking is his over in his points, 26.5 points. So you can see in head-to-head matchups, 11 games against the Lakers, he's cashed this 9 times, averaging 29.9 points per game. He's covered this line in 6 consecutive games against the Los Angeles Lakers. In his last 10, he's only hit this 4 times. averaging 23 points per game. His last two have been great, though. Very important part of the season for both of these teams. So someone like Steph Curry definitely needs to be on. And given his historical form, I just can't not take this bet. So most likely I'll take it. The next one is for Andrew Wiggins. Looking at his first quarter prop here, so similar to Steph, he's got some really great historical form against the Lakers. His line's at 3.5. I do like that because that's only 2 buckets that you need from Wiggins. He's cashed this in 7 of his last 10, averaging 4.1 points per game in the first quarter. His matchup, probably somewhat on the difficult side here against the Lakers, but against the Lakers, done extremely well. He's covered this first quarter prop in 8 of his last 11. He's versed the Los Angeles Lakers, I think just once this season, actually. Yeah, just once this season. And in that game, scored 7 points. So has got it done. Just needs to make 2 buckets. I'm still going to research that bet a little bit more. If he needs 2 buckets, I'd like to see 3 to 4 shot attempts per game in the first quarter as an average. So I'll check to see his activity. We might see an Andrew Wiggins bet on the first quarter. And then the last one, it's someone I haven't bet on that much at all this season. And a bit of a clue, the risk is he could get freaking ejected from this game because he loves that. But I'm looking at Draymond's rebounds, 6.5 boards. So these days he's playing at the 4. He's not playing at the 5 as much. They'll have Trey Jackson Davis in this game. Obviously, if AD does play, Draymond's not going to be the one defending him. So looking at Draymond's rebound line, 6.5. He's covered this in 7 of his last 10 games, averaging 6.8 rebounds. The matchup's not too bad against the Lakers. They do allow rebounds to power forwards and centers. And in head-to-head matchups, check this out. Very green for Draymond. He's covered this in 10 of his last 13 games against the Lakers. 6 consecutive games against LA. He's gone over 6.5 boards. He's not the starting center, but Trey Jackson Davis, he's only going to get more minutes if Anthony Davis does play. And if he does, Draymond Green up against Rui, not a great offensive rebounder either. I think Draymond can get some really easy boards in this. Hopefully push, find Steph Curry on the break. So, yeah, I don't mind this bet for Draymond. I'm pretty confident I'm going to take it, but I'm going to dive in a little bit further to see what else I like. So I've been recording for close to an hour. Obviously, I want to do my edits. I think this will probably be a 55-minute video, but it is late. It is almost midnight. I'm going to edit, chop this up, do some thumbnails, do a little artwork, get it out to you guys as soon as I possibly can. I then have to go back and research all 33 players once again to determine which ones am I going to take. So it's going to be a very late night for me. So I do hope you guys appreciate all the effort that I go through to make all this happen. All of this is done for free, obviously. So the only thing I ask that you like, drop me a comment for the algorithm, share it. Playoffs are coming. It's going to be a really exciting time. I've got no major announcements to make at the moment. I am looking at YouTube, though. I know a lot of you guys are saying you want to find ways to support me, which is great. Looking at a YouTube membership where you can get extra perks like prioritize your comments, different badges, early access to videos, all that type of stuff. So I'm waiting for YouTube to approve that. But once the memberships thing is ready, I'll be sharing that with you guys. I think it'll be like $5 a month or something like that. But you know, every dollar counts, and it can really just keep encouraging me to keep going. So pretty excited. Hopefully I don't end up with like 30 different bets today, but we'll see. I'll do my best to eliminate the ones I think won't win. There's a lot for me to get through. So I appreciate it. If you made it this far, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Be good.
Sub to the channel because your boy's getting busy. Coming to your line from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. It's all free. You don't even have to pay me.